Have you ever imagined dying, meeting Jesus, and being sent back with an urgent mission to save millions of lives? Today you will hear the story of a priest who saw the future of humanity and returned from the dead shouting, "Flee from these places before the tribulation." Listen to this incredible testimony. My name is Father Jean-Baptiste Moore, and for 42 years I served the Lord in the parish of Saint Michel, nestled among the ancient vineyards of the Loire Valley in France. Throughout my life, I believed I knew the voice of God. I thought I understood His divine will. I was convinced that I was already walking in the full light of His truth. But on November 14, 2025, everything changed. It was a cold, grey afternoon, typical of the French autumn. After evening mass, I decided to visit an elderly parishioner who lived alone on the outskirts of the village. Mr. Dupont had not attended mass for 3 weeks, something unusual for a man who rarely missed a Eucharistic celebration in more than 50 years. Heaven had already. It was getting dark when he left the church. My old Citroën purred gently as I drove along the winding roads through the vineyards. I prayed the rosary as I always did during my travels, finding comfort in the familiar rhythm of the Hail Marys. It began to rain, first as a light drizzle, then with increasing intensity, turning the asphalt into a treacherous black mirror. It all happened on a sharp bend. A truck loaded with barrels of wine appeared coming from the opposite direction, skidding out of control. There was no time to swerve, to brake, or even to finish my prayer. I only remember the deafening sound of metal on metal, the shattering of glass, and then the deepest silence I have ever experienced. The impact was devastating and instantaneous. I felt the crushing force of the collision. I heard the terrible sound of the car's structure twisting around me, and then I experienced the most extraordinary sensation of my life. In that precise instant, I perceived my soul separating from my physical body like a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis. There was no pain or fear, only an overwhelming sense of liberation as I rose above the wreckage that had once contained my earthly form. I looked down and saw my battered body trapped in the car wreckage, blood pooling around my head. My eyes closed in what seemed like a peaceful sleep, yet I felt more alive than ever in my 68 years of earthly existence. My spirit was vibrant, whole, and brimming with an energy that made my physical body feel like a heavy cloak, one I had finally been allowed to shed. Suddenly, I was enveloped in a light so bright and pure that it made the sun seem like a distant, faint candle. This light was not dazzling or blinding, but welcoming and warm, filling every fiber of my being with indescribable love and peace. Within this radiance, a figure began to approach, and my spirit recognized it immediately. Jesus Christ was walking toward me. Although he appeared to be about 30 years old, his presence radiated eternity. His eyes reflected a compassion I had never imagined, and as he looked at me, I felt completely known, completely understood, and completely loved. Despite all the flaws and weaknesses of my earthly life, Jean-Baptiste said, his voice both music and thunder, gentle yet with absolute authority, "I have called you home for a brief moment because there are things my people need to know before the Great Tribulation begins. The warnings I am about to give you are not symbolic or metaphorical, they are concrete instructions that will make the difference between life and death for countless souls." As he spoke these words, the space around us began to transform. We were no longer in that realm of brilliant light, but on what appeared to be a high mountain overlooking the entire earth. From this privileged vantage point, I could see continents and nations stretching out below us like a living map, and Jesus began to show me visions of what would happen in the very near future. The first vision struck me like lightning. I saw armies gathering in a region I immediately recognized as the Middle East, circling the city of Jerusalem like vultures around their prey. The vision filled me with dread because I could feel the spiritual darkness emanating from those forces, a darkness so dense it seemed to swallow the light itself. "Look carefully, John the Baptist," Jesus said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "See where my people must not be when the final hour comes. The first place of death is Judea and all the region surrounding Jerusalem. When you see the abomination of desolation in the holy place, those who are in Judea must flee immediately to the mountains. Do not return to retrieve your belongings. Do not hesitate for a moment, for the destruction that will come will be swift and relentless. I watched in horror as the vision unfolded before my eyes. I saw a figure of immense evil enter the rebuilt temple in Jerusalem and proclaim himself God, demanding worship from all who witnessed his blasphemous act. The instant this abomination was revealed, earthquakes began to shake the entire region with unprecedented violence. Buildings that had stood for centuries collapsed like sandcastles, and the earth itself opened up to swallow entire neighborhoods. But the earthquakes were only the beginning. Fire began to falling from the sky like burning hail, consuming everything in its path. The armies surrounding Jerusalem turned their weapons not only against the city, but also against all the towns and villages of Judea. I saw believers who had waited too long to flee, who had hesitated to abandon their homes and possessions, trapped in the chaos with no escape. Yet even in this vision of judgment, I witnessed God's mercy. I saw groups of faithful who had heeded the warning, fleeing to remote caves in the mountains the moment the abomination was revealed. In those hidden places, I observed angels providing supernatural protection and provision, just as God had fed the Israelites with manna in the desert centuries before. This is why the warning is so specific, Jesus explained as the vision continued. Judea will become the epicenter of my final judgment on earth. The spiritual forces of darkness will concentrate their power there, and no human force will be able to withstand what is coming. Only those who trust fully in my provision and flee when I command them will survive what is about to happen. The vision revealed a devout Catholic family in Jerusalem who had felt the call of the Holy Spirit to leave the holy city, but argued that God would never ask the faithful to abandon the land where Jesus had walked. They remained in Judea when the abomination of desolation was revealed, and their religious devotion was their downfall, for they trusted in their own understanding, instead of following clear divine instructions. So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination of desolation, described by the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let no one on the housetop come down to retrieve anything from his house. Let no one on the housetop come down to retrieve anything from his house, and let no one in the field return for his cloak. How miserable those days will be for pregnant and nursing mothers. Pray that your flight will not occur in the winter or on the Sabbath.